Ah, you know, we had many funny moments in the World March. There's no doubt about that. Trying to find one. The most recent that comes to mind, and in fact I have repeated it a couple of times, is when traveling through Central America, for those of us who mainly are speaking English and had difficulty because suddenly there were fewer translations. You know, so many people speak Spanish. I think there's a mindset that everybody understands what's going on. And Baravi is the one that brought it up and said, we want translation. We want, we need a translation into English. I don't understand Spanish. And I'm not sure who said it, but perhaps Mickey, in jest, of course, said, well, I'm going to start charging for these translations. And Baravi came back with a wonderful reply and said, well, I think for every, oh, she didn't say think, she just said, for every word that I have to listen to in Spanish, I want to be paid 10 cents. And of course we all laughed. It was a great laugh. And so that was one of them. The most difficult moment, whoa. You know, at first when I hear that, I almost can't even think of in terms of difficulty for some reason, just putting my mind to what was difficult. On the other hand, we actually had a lot of difficult moments. So we had a lack of communication, which had nothing to do with language. It had to do really with a lack of communication and organization. I think that was painful. And perhaps if I just choose one of those kind of difficult moments was when we tried to kind of brush things under, not face them, by having a meeting to actually bring things to the surface. But maybe one concrete one is we had difficulties changing money. No one was really in charge of changing money. So each time we went to another country, we didn't have the right currency. On one particular time, we were making a stop. We were traveling in a bus. We stopped. We were never sure what we were stopping for, if it's a bathroom stop or food or snack. But because we hadn't eaten, we went into a mini market, and a few of us did not have the currency. So it was really a lack of communication and organization, and we really couldn't talk anybody into giving us any currency. So a few of us were there without the right currency and without food. I think some sense finally prevailed. We didn't starve. You know, I was touched by so many people. I mean, just sometimes not even a person that I even spoke to. It could be in passing. I really enjoyed the marches and just making eye contact with someone on the side, and then talking to people in the march. But one that really moved me tremendously was in Nicaragua. When we went to a school, it was a cultural school of arts, and the director he explained that they were keeping the traditions of the indigenous people alive by teaching the children various dances. And they did give performances. I had already seen some other things at the school that for me presented somewhat of a conflict, you know, about Sandinistas and about the United States and, you know, various things. So there was an internal conflict for me about my ties to the United States. And there was a tremendous surge that I felt of the importance for people to keep their culture alive. And I actually was moved to make a commitment to that school that to work with them after the march. And I think about that from day to day when I am having some difficulties. I'm looking forward to that. I did come into the march with my perceptions, and I must say that I went through a period of time when much changed, and then I actually went through a period of time that brought me back to a lot of my original thoughts. Excuse me. What transformed me was really somewhat the realization of truly how much violence there is in the world, and the knowledge that there's so much violence even in myself. I don't think I really recognized that before. And it's one thing to be kind or to do a kind act, but to really be free of violence inside, whoa, I realized I have a lot of work to do. You know, I had various expectations along the way. Sometimes coming into a country I had some expectation, and sometimes not so much. Generally I was quite surprised. So just by what I'd heard and by the structure of what was set for the march, going into the United States, frankly, I did not have high expectations. So I was wonderfully surprised. I think there was tremendous representation and welcoming. Going into New York, it was absolutely wonderful. And the experience in New York was, for me, wonderful. And I felt quite proud that, by association, that the march was so well received. I also went to Red Bluff Park in California during my section of the United States March. And again, I was overwhelmed in the positive manner. And there were a number of people that came together from various organizations. And although it was a relatively small gathering, it was probably 80 people, but for Red Bluff Park, it was extraordinary. It was 57 people more than expected. But I must say, the quality of the talks that was given there, the presentations, was, for me, the best of the entire march. Yes, it was wonderful. I wish I could say that the value of this march, I wish I really could put it in some perspective. I think for me, it is the promise of what the value is, because I look at even yesterday, the ending for us. You know, for many of us, it was quite emotional, because it is the end of something, and yet we know it's the beginning of something. And I thought back on how many people's lives we have touched, and how many people touched our lives, and yet Woodstock had more people, you know, present for what they were doing back then than we had present at the end of our march. And so it brought me back to some sense of reality. That is to say, we did touch more people than they did at Woodstock overall over this period. And yet it does bring it back to some perspective in terms of the real impact of this march. It's yet to come, the value.